Welcome back to Clarkston Lighthouse Guidance. My name is Chandler Fleming, and I'm the owner and chief therapist at Clarkston Lighthouse Counseling here in Clarkston.
And I'm Victoria Fleming, owner and therapist at Clarkston Lighthouse Counseling. Welcome to our show today, where we are going to talk about mind traps.
Ooh, it sounds like a mouse trap.
It is a lot like a mouse trap because we actually baited ourselves inadvertently. Isn't that sad?
We baited ourselves inadvertently?
Yeah, we kind of set ourselves up for a negative outcome by this faulty thinking that we can fall into.
I think I'm stuck in that one.
So, we better get you out. So let's look at the first one. The first one is pretty self-explanatory, but it is black or white thinking. And this is going to be the person who has a tendency towards perfectionism. It is a success or a failure. It is good or it's bad, but very rarely for this individual is it a shade of gray of any kind.
You know, and I play golf. Well, I don't really play golf, but I pretend to play golf. And there are many times people will like hit the ball and it's like 8 feet from the pin and they'll go, oh man, I wish I hit it on the downhill side, or I hit that one wrong, or whatever. Not like it's a beautiful shot 8 feet from the pin. So.
And they see it as a failure rather than a success.
Definitely a failure, you know? And I'd be glad to make it to the green.
So for this person, this is a tendency. They may have done really well overall, but because it was not perfect, it is a failure. You know, they may have wanted a 100 on their test, but they got a few wrong, still an A. But in their mind, the way they're thinking about it is not a success, it is a failure. And so you can see how that becomes a mind trap in that rather than being able to celebrate that, yeah, maybe it wasn't 100%, that it was still an A and that it was still well done. That no, maybe the golf ball didn't land exactly where you wanted it to be, but overall it was still a very good hit and that it landed in a really good place, especially for those who may be struggling with hitting it and getting it where they want it at all, right?
You know, and hole-in-ones are awesome because they're rare. So, you know, just recognize most people don't hit hole-in-ones every time, hole-in-ones every time. In a lot of things, we don't hit perfection. And that's what makes perfection that much better.
Right, is the fact that it is a rare occurrence instead of an everyday occurrence. So you can just imagine the pressure that puts on a person.
So how do I overcome it though?
You know, it's definitely being able to challenge, you know, is this truly a success or a failure, or is it a success that wasn't maybe as great as I wanted, but is still a success? And it's, I think, recognizing it in the first place. Wow, I'm doing black or white thinking here. I'm making this good or bad, instead of in any way recognizing there's moderation. And that it's not all or nothing, it's not success or failure, that it's somewhere in the middle, and that's okay.
And I oftentimes have my clients make up a chart. So make a chart, either 1 through 100, depending on how ambitious you are, or 1 to 10. And if it was a 10, what would that look like? How would you feel? If it was a 9, what would that look like? And oftentimes things that are 7 or 8s are still pretty good, and you should feel good about it. So just because it's not a 10.
And the other thing I think is recognize, would we do it to someone else? You know, if someone else had gotten that hit, they may be like, oh my gosh, that was fabulous. But for whatever reason, that's not the measure they use for themselves.
Sure.
You know, so there has to be that offsetting of like, wow, I'm being really hard in my thinking. So black or white thinking is a dangerous place to go, because very rarely in life is it all good or all bad.
Right, and one of the ways of getting out of all these traps is you gotta ask yourself different questions. So with black and white thinking, that different question is, what else is true? How bad is it? How good is it? What's good about it? Because even there are even good things that come out of bad things.
Right. Oh, absolutely. A great learning curve. I appreciate that. Another mind trap that people can fall into is mind reading. And that's the reason we have the crystal ball. It's the, I know what the other person is thinking. And the reality is an assumption of what the other person is thinking.
Wow.
That could be so incredibly wrong.
I think you were thinking that was like a really bad gesture.
I was. No, I'm only kidding.
Like, why are you doing that on camera?
But,
we did not rehearse that.
We did not rehearse that, but we did talk about how, like, and this has actually been done, where a couple of girls will walk into a classroom and they'll start laughing.
Oh yeah, I love that.
You know, and then the other kids will be asked, what do you think they were laughing about? And what is their answer?
Oh, they always think it's about them, that the two girls, and then you ask them, like, why were they laughing at you? And they come up with reasons. You know, well, I made a funny gesture towards my head, or my tennis shoes were untied, or just my hair sticking up, whatever. They always have some reason to believe that laughing is about them.
And in reality, it's not. I can remember I had someone walk up to me and say, "Your husband does not like me." And I was like, "Why in the world would you think my super easygoing, very friendly husband does not like you?" Well, when he sees me, he'll look right at me and walk right past me. Well, knowing my husband the way I do, I know that he can be very focused and that he was probably just thinking about something, walking from point A to point B, and did not even see the person. Looked right at the person, but did not see the person. And so by that mind reading, my friend had inadvertently made an assumption that my husband did not like her, and that just wasn't true. And that's how we start challenging it, is again what Chandler said about asking the question, what else could be true? So maybe if my friend had stopped and thought, gosh, he did look kind of serious, or he didn't even blink, nothing changed about his expression, he may have just been really focused, So it is dangerous to make the assumption, because what's true of assume? What does assume spell?
It makes a bad thing out of you and me.
It absolutely does. It makes a first three letters ass out of you and me, and we don't want to be
Such
doing
language.
that. Yeah, I know.
Not good. Not good at all. You know what my assumption about that is? Oh, never mind.
So we do just be, and you start seeing in a way how we then bait it, because it becomes a habit.
Right, and there are definitely patterns and habits that are involved in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So another one that there is expecting the worst.
It's the hurricane.
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be a tornado come ripping through our neighborhood anytime.
Yep.
And we're going to be financially ruined.
And it's weird because it's a series of steps. And sometimes it really starts off with something bad. You might be a teenage girl, got a zit on your face. I got a zit on my face. Everybody's going to stare at it. It's going to make me an outcast. Because I'm an outcast, nobody's going to ask me out. And when I grow up, I'm going to be that weird cat lady that has 25 cats and never marry. And part of that is biological, that when we have something that throws us off, our body kind of goes into this panic mode. And we start to have that fight or flight response, and our thoughts run wild. So what starts off as a little blemish kind of turns into something totally out of control.
Or the person who's running late, they accidentally slept through their alarm, and now they're in a sense of panic, and now their brain has gone into full-blown, oh, that's it, I'm late, I'm going to get in so much trouble, my day is going to be ruined, expecting the worst.
Sure.
When in reality, yes, you're late, but that in no way means that the entire day has to be ruined. In no way means that the entire day has to be ruined. So it's being able to again recognize, okay, I'm already letting my brain go down a very slippery slope, a very bad slippery slope, and it's not helping the situation. So what can I do? Okay, I'm running late. I may let my boss know that I'm running late, and I may take control of this scenario.
Sure. And the other thing about this too is I look at the halfway thing, where I know a lot of people will start down that road of this is really, really bad, and they have that next thought that's kind of like semi-conscious, semi-unconscious, like what if something really bad happens from this? But they don't think it through. And one of the ways of fighting those runaway thoughts is saying, okay, what's the worst thing will happen? Well, I'm a cat lady with 50 cats and I'm single. Well, okay, is that very likely? No. Am I blowing it out of proportion? But a lot of times people get close to those thoughts and they're in their mind, they just won't express them. Oftentimes if we play things out, we come up with solutions like, okay, if I'm on the path of being a cat lady, what can I do? Well, I could work on my appearance. I could go to the dermatologist. I could,
set up a
classes.
backup alarm to make sure I don't sleep through the
Right.
clock the next time, so that
Right.
I'm not running late and in a panic and thinking
Right.
that the absolute worst is going to happen.
Yeah, and even if, really worse, you get fired. Well, what would you do? Well, you'd look for another job, and most likely you'd find another job.
Right, absolutely. And sometimes it can actually be an opportunity.
Sure, definitely
So
can. So sometimes you got to play out some of those negative thoughts and then challenge what would I do if those negative thoughts took place.
yeah, so do recognize that it is a mind trap, that it is faulty thinking to automatically go to and expecting the worst because of, one event, because of one trigger, because of one zit on your face, because of sleeping through the alarm. And people can get into a place where that's their energy is being consumed in that worry and in that anxiety, and it really just makes matters worse.
Oh, most definitely.
You know, so really avoid that. Another one is the always and never.
I never do that.
Yeah. And I always do that.
Really?
Oh my goodness, maybe that's why we're together, is to balance it out.
I hope
you know?
so. I hope so for sure.
You know, so how exactly is always and never different from black or white?
You know,
There's some
I think
commonality.
I think there's definitely commonality, but I think it's a lot of times always and never. Black and white starts off with always and never. It's what is the message that we send to ourselves, and it ignores the exceptions. Where black and white kind of has to do with interpretation, always and never has to do with our language and our focus. So we focus on all those things that fulfill that thought. Oftentimes we'll find ways to validate that always and never.
And it's sad because, again, it sets us up for a negative in that, let's say our friend inadvertently this year forgets our birthday, but then we fall into that, oh my gosh, she always does this. She's always so inconsiderate. She never is mindful of me. Well, then that sabotages, it's very faulty thinking, and sabotages the relationship. Because if we can stop ourselves and be like, okay, now wait a minute, is that true? Did she forget my birthday last year? No. And so it becomes an emotional response rather than a more logical response. And that can be hard, but always and never are rarely true.
Right.
Rarely is it always something, and rarely is it never something. You know, so it becomes that questioning again of, is this true?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times we talk ourselves into a lot of these problems, and so when we learn to talk ourselves out of it by changing our language, saying, you know what, this frequently happens. Well, really, it's not frequent. It rarely happens. I don't always run out of gas. I'm
not always late. Oh my gosh, I'm always late.
late.
Look at this. This is terrible. I'm never going to get that promotion because I'm always late, and this is a disaster. So you can start seeing how these mind traps start interlinking, you know, or interconnected with each other. But the reality is you're not always late. You likely would have already been fired, and you very likely could get the promotion. So it's just faulty thinking.
Yep. And it's a trap.
And it is a trap. And it's a trap that we want you to avoid because it sabotages life in a lot of ways, you know. Another one of those sticky mind traps is that should, could, and ought. The shoulda, coulda, woulda, you know, but the should, could, and ought of life, gosh, what is that?
You know, for me, I interpret it a lot of times as an untrue message. There are definitely shoulds. I should brush my teeth. Yep, I should. I should get a physical. I should go to work. But there's a lot of shoulds out there that, especially outside people, will foist on ourselves, or we'll foist on ourselves. You know, it's not the end of the world if you took 3 days to send a thank you note as opposed to 2 days.
Oh, I should have gotten that out right away.
Should have gotten
that out. Yeah.
Well, where's the rule book on that? Who says that 2 days? You know what? I think if they send a thank you note in 2 days, they should have waited longer because they really didn't fully appreciate it. But again, who makes those rules, and how do we set those things up?
Or the coworker got the promotion you were desperately hoping to get, and you tell yourself, I ought to feel happy about this. Well, the reality is you need to deal with the fact that I'm really disappointed.
Sure.
I am eventually going to be really happy, or maybe even hour be really happy, but by telling ourselves I ought to, we've really just triggered even more negativity and more guilt, as opposed to just being like, ah man, I'm so frustrated and this rots, this is not what I wanted, but I am actually happy for them. But telling ourselves I ought to just burdens
And I think when
us.
we have those shoulds, coulds, oughts, things like that, we should sincerely ask ourselves why. And you know, there are times that I go to bed and I think I should have cleaned the house, and it's true, I should, and I probably should get up and clean the house because I'd be happier. There are times that I should send out that thank you letter. So there's good reason for my should, and you know, if I should and I want to enough, I'm going to.
I appreciate, what were you talking about? We talked about a woman who was going to her sister's wedding.
Yep, it was a cousin's wedding. Yeah.
Okay, a cousin's wedding. And what was it that had happened with the should?
Yep. So I had this great client, and she wanted to lose weight, so she went on a diet, and she lost like 25 pounds.
Wow.
And I said, so are you excited about your cousin's wedding? She goes, not really. There's gonna be a lot of good food there, and I think I'm gonna
stay on my diet.
I should stay on my diet. But she said, I'm going to. And I said, no, you're not. And she goes, no, I'm not. And I said, well, don't be caught up. If you're not going to stay on your diet, at least enjoy the food.
Yes.
And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, enjoy it. Say, I made a choice. I'm an adult. I can break my own rules and enjoy it. And she came back, she goes, that was the best advice ever. I ate bread with butter on it, and it was delicious. I haven't had a big piece of bread in a long time.
And cheesecake.
And I had some cheesecake, and I really enjoyed it. And it wasn't the end of the world.
Yeah, so allow ourselves some grace in that, because it would have been a double loss.
Right.
I shouldn't do this, or I should do this, and then I know I'm going to fail, and now there's guilt.
Right. So if you skip class, at least have fun.
Yeah. That's a good
Don't
point.
skip class, though.
Another one would be the opposite of rose-colored glasses. And with rose-colored glasses, we can tend to refer to these people as Pollyanna, and they're always looking at the rainbow, they're always looking at the positive. But there are very many people who have dark-colored glasses.
Yep.
And with those dark-colored glasses, they're seeing not the rainbow, but the clouds. They're seeing the rain.
Sure.
And they have a tendency to focus on that which is negative in a situation and automatically filter that which is negative in a situation rather than the positives as well. So this would be an individual, say, who's doing a speech to a group of people, and one person in the entire room yawns, and now their brain has filtered this, what I'm talking about must be boring. I'm clearly not captivating enough to keep these people's interest. And yet the rest of the room is captivated.
Yep.
And we're making a mind reading assumption that we're boring, when in reality the person who yawned may not have gotten any sleep. They have a newborn baby at home or whatever.
Or they're just rude.
Or they're just,
they're just rude people. They're pretty narcissistic and caught up on themselves, and they're just rude. And I think it's interesting, especially this particular topic, is something called the thematic aptitude test, where you give people a picture of something and you ask them to tell the story. And if you have a negative bias, you tell a negative story. There was a study done with depressed people. They tend to tell a negative story. And then there was also another study where they had people that were depressed estimate size and value of things, and they were very depressing in their estimates and value of things.
So we have to be very careful of that. And so we can make fun of the rose-colored glasses person, but clearly they're happier. And for the person who is the dark-colored, we need to recognize, take that thought captive, be like, okay, wait a minute, look at the other variables, look at the other people in the room, and then choose what you're going to filter.
Right.
Absolutely.
Feelings are indicators, not dictators. So you don't have to go with that negative feeling.
The next one is name calling, and this is the big labeling. This is the loser.
Yes, for sure.
And this is very much a dialogue. This is kind of that always and never, where there's an internal dialogue going on and it can actually kind of go together, where I'm always a loser. So again, they become interlinked. But this is where I make a mistake and automatically I'm a failure, I'm a loser, I always do this, I'm such an idiot. Clearly, that is a mind trap that's going to lead to nothing but negativity. And it can inadvertently become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whereas if I'm thinking of myself as a loser, as a failure who always does this, then I'm apt to repeat that, that behavior. I'm apt to go into it with a negative mindset and set myself up.
I call it microscope view. Oftentimes people with labeling and name calling, it's like looking through a microscope. You're looking at one tiny piece of it and you lose track of the whole picture. So if I'm a loser, that's all I think about. I don't think about the areas that I am a winner. I don't think about those areas that I'm beneficial, that I'm a father, that I'm a husband, that I'm a good therapist. I just think, boy, am I a loser? I wrecked my car.
So again, that's where those questions come into play.
Sure.
You know, hey, Victoria, are you always a loser or did you just mess up this time?
Right.
You know, and we add that perspective, and is this really going to matter, you know, an hour from now, because we can tend to make it bigger than it is.
Sure.
So a person is never one thing. They're never just a loser. They may have had a losing moment,
Sure.
but they are not a loser.
Right.
You know, so again, just a dangerous mind trap, to be sure.
Every cloud has a silver lining.
Yes, it does. And those rose-colored glasses are a lot happier than the dark-colored
They really
ones.
are. Although a lot of times they get themselves set up for disappointment.
You know, so as you're reflecting, you may have seen again some correlation between the two, but they do tend to feed off of each other. You know, if I'm thinking I always mess up, I'm always a loser, then I'm going to tend to mind read that people are thinking I always mess up, then I'm a loser, and it's going to feed into black and white thinking. So be very aware of how you're baiting your own traps, and you want to set yourself free and live a much more satisfying life by not being caught up in those mind traps. So be careful of faulty thinking. It can be dangerous.
Great show, Victoria. Thank you so much. And thank you for all those people that are watching it. Tell all your friends. Like us on YouTube and on Facebook. Do also send in your questions. We're on Facebook, so look us up on Facebook. Send in those questions so we can answer them online and on air. And thank you so much for watching.
Have a wonderful day.
The views expressed in this show are for general educational purposes only and do not constitute professional advice on any subject matter, nor do they necessarily reflect the views or opinions of its guests or of Independence Television. If mental health assistance is needed, please seek professional licensed treatment.